Live from the Export Beer Garden studios, you're listening to the BYC, where we'll be looking at the recent series against the Bangers, a satisfactory result given our struggles over there in the past, who advanced their cause for the upcoming World Cup, and who fell down the ladder. And do we base any potential selections on this recent series? We'll also look at the Indians and Australians, with India going 2-0 up and Australia losing 5 one-dayers on the bounce. But don't be fooled, those filthy cheating men in yellow will be there or thereabouts come World Cup time. And Dylan Cleaver, this recent series, my friend, what did we learn?
I thought it was a sneaky good result, actually.
It actually was quite a positive result because we have struggled there in the past.
We have, and what was pleasing, I guess, was we battled through some tough times. Yeah, they weren't easy conditions. We got the tail end of the monsoon season by the looks of it.
Yes.
So the Ganges Delta, where the series was held, was a wash. But when we did get on the field, I thought we played really sensible cricket. Perhaps not the most riveting one-day cricket you're going to see. And I think when you compare it to what's happening at the moment in places like Indore and Mohali, certainly not the high-octane cricket that India are producing. But you play your conditions, did very well, and we'll go through it a bit later, but I thought the players that needed to do well, for the most part, did.
Yes.
So there'll be some pretty happy faces at the High Performance Centre of New Zealand Cricket.
Look, I'll be honest with you, Paul Ford, I didn't go full mongrel on this series. I didn't have very high expectations, but I think that what Dylan says is right. It was a solid performance from us. It didn't light the world on fire, but we learnt a little bit more than we did before the series.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it is the first time we've beaten Bangladesh for 15 years.
Wow.
Which is probably an indication that we don't go there that often, and when we do, it's not particularly enjoyable. So, look, I think it was a pretty decent performance from a below-strength New Zealand team against the below-strength Bangladesh team, watching it on YouTube, which actually worked quite well. But I had to conduct a fairly serious forensic investigation to discover that that's where we could watch it. But you're right, Jay, I didn't settle in for sort of 8 hours of ball-by-ball coverage. But to be fair, the YouTube channel had some pretty decent highlights and all sorts of things, so managed to keep a pretty good eye on it. And, it was one of those series that felt like it was a warm-up game to a World Cup, which, of course, is exactly what it is. And it doesn't really matter, but there's some good indications there for the Kiwis, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, projecting ahead in terms of, this is what the New Zealanders are known for in terms, being solid, without lighting the, you've mentioned other teams there that look far better than us.
More dynamic,
yeah, that's a better word. And we're solid and we're always kind of there or thereabouts. Which always lends itself for me, I'd like to see us take some risks. Thus our chat in the last podcast, Reed Chapman, I'd like us to think a little bit outside the box a little bit, because I feel like we need to do that. Just playing our game, it feels we're going to fall a bit short, Dylan.
Yeah, well, I guess you could say just playing our game made us fall a bit short in the last 2 World Cups, but by the barest of margins.
Yes, true.
So, look, I don't mind our approach as long as there's some key fundamentals in it. And one of them is wickets at the top with the new ball.
Yes.
It's going to be critical for New Zealand because, we're not going to chase down 399 to win a game with the batting lineup structured as it is. And, look, your dream of a Mark Chapman facing the new ball, I think, is pretty much consigned to the dustbin of history that never actually happened after Will Young did everything and probably a little bit more than was asked for him. And just to reiterate a point Paul made, 7 ODI losses in Bangladesh in a row before the series, before that rain out in the first ODI. I think we lost 8 of the last 10. So going there and getting a victory with only 5 of the players that are going to go to the World Cup, this series is never going to be remembered. Like, it's never going to win any awards, but it was a damn solid performance, and from a solid team that has built a solid preparation for what they hope will be a solid World Cup campaign.
Interesting, the wickets over there turn square a lot of the time. There's been some real doozies over the years, but Dylan mentioned Young there. Probably took his opportunity. Paul Ford, what's your view on it?
Yeah. He certainly did. I mean, I think he averaged 43 for the series. He had 128 runs off 179 balls. Did everything that I think that was asked of him. Really, I mean, he always looks good, and in this series at least he went on to get a one decent score. Two decent scores actually, because he got runs in the rained out game too.
Yes, and the no result.
Couple of 50s. I think the series is probably going to be remembered for the feats of Ish Sodhi, the first New Zealand spinner to get 6 wickets in a one-day international. He had a hell of a game in that second game, and then followed it up with 8 overs, none for something in the third game. So yeah, it's he was another one that caught my eye. I think Tom Blundell as well. I mean, I know a couple of not outs, but
here we go.
99 for the series. I think he'd take that, Tom Blundell. Pretty useful, and I think Henry Nicholls, I wouldn't say sent sort of a pugnacious message to or aggressive message to the selectors, but he'll be disappointed to not be at that World Cup, and good on him for turning in. I think he was man of the series.
Yeah, actually. He was man of the series.
He batted bloody well actually. I did actually settle in and watch far too much of this series.
Yes,
and did impress with Harvey Nicholls.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because. We were talking in the last podcast about who's our second spinner, Dylan Cleaver. You were very concerned. Looks to me like Sodhi nailed it down, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think his stock has risen dramatically. I'm not sure he's nailed it down. I wouldn't go quite that far. There's still some fish hooks to his game. Moves turns like the Queen Mary in the field.
Yes.
And when you're defending on small grounds with high totals, can you carry a poor fielder? And the third ODI was kind of the antithesis of what he did in the second ODI. So I still have question marks around it, but his stock definitely rose after that 6-for.
Yeah, he's a shockingly bad fieldsman, very much in the sort of Paul Ford kind of realm. But I recall too a handy 35 from him in that second one day as well. Your thoughts, Paul Ford, on lovely Trenty?
Yeah, well, I mean, 2 wickets in the series. He looked good. He looked threatening, and it was a good pace trio actually when he was steaming in with Ferguson and Milne. Enjoyed that in the third match. I thought he looked fit. He looked hungry. He just sort of didn't get to rip through, in all of the games. But generally, I thought he looked like he's in good shape. And I can't wait to see him out there in the World Cup.
Anyone else for you standing out there, Dylan Cleaver? Ferguson, Ravindra?
I don't think Ravindra did much to push his case for being in the playing 11.
Yes.
In India. I think, talking about that second spinner, he certainly did more. Ferguson, I don't think he bowled amazingly, but what I was really pleased about in that third ODI was the pace.
Yes.
The pace returned. He was like 147, 148. He got out Mushfiqur, who is a quality bat with like pure pace, forcing him back onto his stumps. He kind of played on. I still think they made a mistake there. I think Milne is, at this point in time, the better bowler.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's really fair to say, and we've talked about this as well, I don't think Ferguson's been in great nick.
Not for a year and a half.
Not for quite an extended period of time, Paul Ford. With that in mind, where are you going? Where are you leaning, Milne or Ferguson, for the out and out pace?
Yeah, I think Milne out bowled him in the series. So it feels like the selectors tossed a coin, and I guess Ferguson's got a point to prove, but he hasn't proved it yet. They've given him the captaincy. They've picked him in the Cricket World Cup. He is the limousine at the other end for Trent Boult with Southee injured, and he's going to get the opportunity. But you'd expect that Southee's going to be knocking on the door. I'm sure we'll talk about him shortly. Look, I think Boult and Henry are your locks, and then Ferguson's really fighting for his place, I think. So
definitely he is.
Yeah, I'm not. He's put together a number of series in a row where he hasn't set the world on fire, and again he hasn't done that in Bangladesh. But as Dylan said, at least he was bowling quick, and I thought he started to look a lot better in that third game. So hopefully he's turned the corner.
Well, it's a really essential element in any side, isn't it? Your out-and-out pace.
Yeah.
Because it is very, very handy indeed to just have someone that just belts it in and hoons it down the wicket. We need one of those guys to fire and be in form.
Well, you need to get wickets through those overs. Once the power play ends, from overs 10 to 40, teams can really get away from you. And that's when they tend to use the guys with out-and-out pace to come in and get a couple of established bats out. Ferguson just hasn't been able to do that for quite a while now.
Yes.
And
why do you think? It's not injury related, is it?
Oh, no, he has had quite a few injuries.
He has over time, yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure, really. Bowlers just sometimes go through extended periods where they struggle to take wickets. Like, you even look at someone like Matt Henry, who is obviously such a quality bowler and has got all the tools to take wickets. Geez, it took him a long time to start taking wickets in Test cricket.
Yeah. Well,
just sometimes these things happen, but I do think he dropped a bit of pace. I think he was starting to put the ball rather than bowl the ball. And, yeah, like I mentioned, he's going to the World Cup. Adam Milne's not. I think it's a mistake, and I also think it's a mistake. We'll talk about Tim Southee now, but the guy on standby for Tim Southee is Jamieson. I thought, actually, on the merits of that third ODI alone, that maybe Milne should have even, I know it's not like for like, but Milne should have leapfrogged Jamieson in terms of that bowler cover over there.
Sure, fair point. And you're right. I mean, bowlers do go through extended periods, where it doesn't happen for them. Things maybe don't go their way. I recall you saying off air, Dylan, that you went through an entire club season with only one wicket and bowling something like 400 or 500 overs. But let's get to the batsmen. Young Allen and, of course, Harry Naps. What are we doing? What are we doing there, Paul Ford?
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a drag race, and you'd have to say that Henry Nicholls probably won it, and he's not going to the World Cup, so it sort of doesn't really mean anything. So, like as we said, Will Young looked good. He averaged 43 for the series, and did pretty much everything that was asked of him. Nicholls just played better across the series, and I think what Nicholls showed was that thing that we've talked about over the last few weeks, which is just that ability to build an innings. And I think Blundell, Young, Nicholls, they all demonstrated that in spades throughout the series of kind of going through the gears, being cautious when they needed to, and then counter-attacking, and then teeing off at the end, but batting and forming significant partnerships, which, as Dylan said before, that's how New Zealand wins these games, right? We're probably not going to have a guy that's going to come out like Glenn Maxwell and club 90 off 40 balls or something. That's generally not going to be the way that we're going to win, 9, 10, 11, whatever it is, one day is over 7 weeks.
Foxcroft.
Poor bugger.
Yeah.
Do you know what? That was a good-looking golden duck.
It was lovely, wasn't it?
ODI debut, comes out facing Shariful, who bowled really well. And that's another thing I would say just very quickly, without wanting to labouring the Will Young point. Facing the new ball was the toughest task over there. Those conditions were pretty tricky, and he worked through some really tough conditions in the first ODI that was eventually abandoned. Whereas I guess the benefit Nicholls had was that he was coming in when some of the work had already been done, and Finn Allen just batted poorly again. I think it kind of almost justified the decision not to take him.
When you end up in the batting averages behind Ish Sodhi, Kyle Jamieson, and Cole McConkey, nothing wrong with that. But when you're an opening bat, trying to sort of show the selectors, put some egg on the selectors' faces. Look, it's another tough series for Phil Allen, 3 bats for 49 runs.
And his shot to get out in the early hours of this morning was wretched.
Yes. I watched a little bit of Foxcroft in the New Zealand Australia, eh?
Good player.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Yes.
I like him. I think he's got some potential. And I mean, that kind of thing happens, doesn't it? I mean, you can go in there and have a mare and get out first ball.
Beautiful left arm in swinging. He looked like he'd played it pretty well. His follow-through looked exceptional. The only problem being he completely missed the ball. The stumps were splayed.
And Mancad controversy, Dylan Cleaver.
Oh, yeah, this was beautiful, actually. This was really and quite critical to the outcome of the match. New Zealand were flailing away a little bit, batting first in that second ODI. All the games were played in Mirpur, by the way, at the National Cricket Stadium. And Sodhi, was he on 17? I'm not quite sure what he was on, but he was caught just out. Like, it was a pretty if there's a spectrum of man-catting, his was on the sneakier
end of it.
And he departed, stage left, and the Bangers captain had a look at it, didn't like what he saw, listened das it was, and recalled him, to which then there was kind of some performative hugging and bonhomie. But the whole thing was cast into sharp relief when after the game, each was glowing about it, what a great gesture, what great sportsmanship, spirit of cricket, etc., etc. And Tammy Iqbal comes out and says, no, it's stupid. We either do these things or we don't. You don't do it and then decide you're not going to do it. And actually, he does raise a point. And, I mean, I think I'm on the record. I'm very clear that I hate it as a mode of dismissal. I think it's cheap,
yes,
pointless. It doesn't involve any contest between bat and ball. Just, I think it's low-down, dirty cricket.
Well, it's something you'd expect the Australians to sort of indulge in a lot.
Yeah, but it's in the rules now.
Yes.
And the guy was perfectly within his rights to do it. And then all of a sudden there's this moral dilemma thrown into the equation. So anyway, I'm intrigued to see what Paul, who's far more liberal on these sort of matters, what he thinks of it.
I am. I did see it live, actually, and I thought, oh, you dirty bastard. So that was my initial reaction. I think as well that Tammy Iqbal did say that. What he said was he'd quite like to have a team meeting about it so that they could decide what they were going to do and then stick with it, once they'd made that decision. He's been dropped from the World Cup squad, so it might be a long time before they have that meeting. Look, I think I did wonder two things. One, if this was a World Cup final, would he have been called back? I feel like the sort of meaninglessness of the series may have been a factor. The other thing that I was wondering about when I watched it was, has Bangladesh, and I don't mean being sucked in, but are they looking at New Zealand and going, they're good buggers? And I wonder if the good buggerness thing has played into New Zealand's hands around this. As you say, Jace, if you'd caught out a dirty, filthy, cheating Australian doing what Ish Sodhi did, maybe you wouldn't have called him back. If that was David Warner or Steve Smith and he walked off the field, having a full tantrum, throwing his bat and bitching and moaning. But Ish Sodhi just sort of wandered off. He looked disappointed, and then he sort of started laughing, like shaking his head like, geez, what a dickhead. And then he got called back. So I wonder if the good-naturedness of the New Zealanders has actually been a factor in that recall as well.
Yeah, maybe. But on the World Cup front, great news. Southee is flying to India, Dylan. That's great news for New Zealand.
And aiming to be fit for the opener.
Yes.
So that's a rapid recovery from what looked to be a fairly nasty break or fracture to the thumb. I imagine he's going to be playing with a splint of some kind, which, great set of hands, Tim, apart from the one he dropped and shattered his thumb on, obviously. But I wonder if that will affect his fielding. Probably will have absolutely zero effect on his batting because he only knows one way.
Yeah.
Whether he's one-armed or two. It is good. I mean, it's good news that he's going. Again, I don't think he's a certainty for a place in that first 11.
Yes, well, and also Jamison mentioned earlier by us unofficially joining the squad there, Paul Ford. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I think it is interesting. I think you could very easily make a case for Adam Milne to be that guy. I actually thought that Milne was injured, but was sort of carrying an injury. But clearly in that third one day where he got 4 wickets and was bowling at pace and looked superb, he's fit as a fiddle at the moment. So, yeah, look, I think he will be deemed unlucky. Like I said last week, I do suspect there'll probably be some more injuries and some more casualties over the course of the tournament. So, I wouldn't be that surprised if Adam Milne's there or thereabouts at the end of the tournament if New Zealand goes deep into it. Weirdly, Kyle Jamieson is travelling with the team, so he's really just there. Well, he is there as a contingency cover. He's not officially in the squad, and that means that as New Zealand play a couple of warm-up games that I know you're going to give us the details on, Jace, he's actually not able to play in those. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, there's actually precedent for what Paul mentions. In 2015, Kyle Mills was part of the World Cup squad, so he was available. They went with a policy back then, Hesson and McCullum, of just playing your first 11 pretty much the entire tournament. One of the bowlers gets injured. I forget exactly who it was now, and they drafted from outside the squad. They drafted Matt Henry in, who usurped Mills in the pecking order and ended up playing the semi-final and the final.
Yes, you mentioned there too, Paul, of course, a couple of warm-up games for New Zealand before the World Cup, September 29th versus Pakistan and Hyderabad, and October the 2nd versus South Africa at the Greenfield International Stadium.
Where is that Greenfield International Stadium?
I can't think off the top of my head. I'm not falling for that, you fellas. I'm not going down there. How do you say that? I mean, that is... You're
not going to... the Ravana the Puram, Jace. There's a couple of extra na-na-na-na-nas in there.
Farina Vanana Puram.
You say it like Hey Jude, don't you?
Yeah.
Na.
Do we care about, warm-up games. Handy to keep the boys ticking over, trying out a few things, getting a few things honed.
I don't care about any game that doesn't count to your official Cricinfo Stats Guru page.
Yes.
That's right. And it's going to be 15, all the players will play. There'll be all sorts of shenanigans. There's not even a crowd at the Pakistan game because the security have advised against playing that match in front of the crowd. To be clear, they sold tickets to the match and then they went, actually, that feels a little bit unsafe. We don't really want lots of large gatherings in Hyderabad. So everyone's been refunded their tickets. Absolute shambles.
Great stuff. Now, listen, just on the World Cup, I've been trolling through the various videos and trying to find some World Cup sort of cricketing highlights from yesteryear. And I stumbled upon that great game, England versus New Zealand, the final over, 15 needed. And I watched it again, and A, Smithy's commentary is magnificent. And B, I forgot just how magnificent and dramatic that final over was.
We're talking the super over here? Or the...
No, getting to the super over.
Right.
The final over, they needed 15. And just how desperately unlucky we were to lose that match. And I thought, without wanting to reopen old wounds, we'd have a listen to it now.
15 from 6. A Yorker, they've got to try and get it back on. He won't take the run. It makes it harder. 15 from 5.
He was going to go thinking I can get 2. But when it didn't go past Williamson, he said, no way, I've got to hit 4s and 6s. I'm going to back myself against your best bowler to hit it for 4 and 6.
Well, if Bolt can come up with another 2 or 3 of those, it's going to be very hard to hit the long ball. 5 to go, 15 to win. Another beautiful length delivery. Stokes can do nothing with it. It's 15 from 4 now. Boundaries are so important.
The line here as well, wide outside off stump. He's taking that leg side out of play. Maybe Stokes has got to open up that offside.
He is so feeling it. Rashid goes down, tries to comfort him, tries to back him. I don't think Stokes can hear a thing. Digs deep, here comes Bolt again, ball number 3. On the money, but it's out of the ground, is it? Is it out of the ground? It is! It is!
What a shot that is. He realised the line was going to be outside off, and he just put his leg down and swept Trent Bolt. Yep, got the slog sweep out for 6. What a shot, what a cricketer.
Down on his haunches, sucking it in again. The crowd absolutely willing it over, the bulk of them anyway. Williamson, a wry smile. It's still on for both here. Goes again. Can he give the strike away? This is a big moment. They've got to run. They go to the other end. Oh, he gets in the way. This has got to go all the way to the boundary off the bat. Can you believe this? It has. I do not believe what I've just seen.
And it will go down as 6, and Ben Stokes cannot do anything about it. He can only apologise. He didn't do it on purpose. He can't do anything about it. He does apologise. It is signalled a 6. New Zealand can't believe it.
Totally inadvertent.
has never, ever changed his line, and he never looked at the ball, Stokes. He had no idea. He holds his hands up. How about the irony of this? Kid born in New Zealand, apologising to his New Zealand mates, but he's still got a World Cup to win. It's 3 from 2 balls. Here's Bolt. Down the ground. Now then, they've got to try and come back. Santner throws it in. Out. Rashid is out. The good part about that, only 1 run.
Maybe Santner could have thrown it at Stokes' end. Stokes was the end to try and run out. They were always going to get a run out there. Rashid did the right thing, sacrificed himself. But maybe the throw could have gone to Stokes' end to run out the person who's going to hurt you in the last delivery.
Can I just say how good that is from Bolt? Barehanded. Can I just say that? 7 weeks of cricket, 48 games, 1 ball. Here's Bolt. They're going to push. Are we in for a super over? They've got to go quick. Out. I'm sure he's out. We're going to a super over.
You are kidding me. Unbelievable. After 7 weeks, we are not done yet.
Great stuff. Painful stuff. But great stuff. Hey, now, Australia versus India. I mentioned at the top there, Australia losing 5 on the bounce. I still, even though they're 2-0 down at the moment to the end, I've been watching a fair amount of that.
Yep.
And, you know, the reality is, yes, India are dominating, but you will never, ever, ever count this Australian side out. They've got firepower to spare, in my view, Dylan Cleaver.
Yeah, they've got an extraordinary yellow uniform too.
Yes.
Like, it's iridescent. Is that the word? It's just, it pops the eyeballs. The thing that's caught my eye, I mean, Australia carrying those losses through from South Africa.
Yes.
Surprised me because they were in such a role in South Africa. I thought they were just going to clean through the Republic. But they started losing there. They brought that losing habit with them to India. But the thing that's really caught my eye in this series is Shubman Gill.
Yeah.
Oh, what a magnificent player to watch. And at times when he gets going and he can take those balls from a 4th stump off stump line through mid-wicket with almost Azruddin-like wristiness, you wonder how you're going to stop the Indian batting lineup sometimes.
Yes.
I mean, they've got guys there scoring runs that probably aren't going to get a game.
Yeah. Look, I think that Shubman Gill, I commentated the New Zealand A versus India A when they came over here, and I watched him live at the Mount, and I think New Zealand A scored something like 300 odd, and the Indians got it at a canter. And I remember just watching Gill pull forward, and I think he's the best batsman I've ever seen live. He is just something else.
That's cool. That's huge.
Seriously,
high praise.
It looked like he looked completely untaxed. He looked completely calm, no stress, and he just slapped the New Zealand bowlers every which way. He is a quality player.
Absolutely, he is. And, you know, they've got a hell of a lot of firepower there with Shreyas Iyers in there too, of course, KL Rahul and then Sky as well, just coming out and belting the living bejesus out of it. I mean, they just adopt a different approach to New Zealand, don't they, where they just red line basically the whole time. They're just gunning it and just backing them, that they can chase or set unattainable scores. That's kind of the Indian way.
Yeah. How do we feel about the prospect of, he's just gone out of my head, off spinner for India?
Ashwin.
Do you think they're going to run with him in the World Cup? Because he's not known as a one-day bowler, and he chops and changes his action. He does all sorts of weird stuff when it comes to one-day cricket. Hasn't been as successful in one day as he has been, of course, in test matches.
Although he's still a weapon in Indian conditions.
Yes, he is, of course.
I actually don't think they're going to go with him. I think they will probably... Jadeja will be their number one guy. They'll look for a mixture of Washington Sundar, maybe Axar Patel. Although Ashwin's been trying a lot of stuff to convince the selectors. He's been playing for Tamil Nadu in the local competition. He's been developing new balls. He's been working extra hard on his batting. But look, my gut feeling is he won't play.
Yeah.
Hard to see him getting in there. I mean, I think 18 months basically before this series of not being in there. The other thing I was just going to say before when you were talking about the Australians is they've got a lot of injuries to navigate. So you're talking about they've got a lot of firepower, Jason. That's true, but quite a lot of that firepower is sitting on the bench at the moment. So Cummins is out with a fractured wrist. Stark's done his groin. Maxwell's still got a sore leg after breaking it last year. Smith's out with a sore wrist. Agar's been injured. Trafford's head is fractured and out for, I think they said, the first 4 games of the World Cup. And plus the sort of ring-in guys, Spencer Johnson and Nathan Ellis, they're out with injuries as well. So, these injuries are going to take their toll on all the teams, but the Aussies feel like they've been particularly hard hit.
And Australia, I think, are going to rely a lot for their success because their bowling can be, I know their pace attack is great, but it can be a little bit one-dimensional in India. They rely a lot on Adam Zampa, who just looks pure out of form.
Yeah, well, it's going to be, you can't, I think both of those sides are going to be formidable opponents in the upcoming World Cup. Obviously, now the White Ferns continue to struggle in South Africa. I've watched a fair amount of that. Jeez Louise. I was watching the New Zealanders batting at one stage. It was like Test cricket. Yeah. It was almost like old school 1980s one-day matches, you know what I mean? Where they just didn't have any urgency in their batting. Disappointing thus far.
Yeah, and look, it feels like a bit of broken record time, doesn't it? And you don't want to be too hard on what is effectively a semi-professional program. But I was really hoping that Ben Sawyer come in and there would be a dramatic reset of the way they play the game. And perhaps that game, it was just circumstances, right? You lose Devine, Bates, Kerr early. When you lose your 3 best players early, that's going to have a dramatic effect on any team. But yeah, they don't score quickly enough. I can't put it any simpler than that. They have to develop in domestic cricket aggressive players who, like Paul mentioned with India, can red line it from ball one.
Yes.
The White Ferns just don't have that. Brooke Halliday batted very pleasantly and nice.
Yes, it's a good way of describing it.
Yeah, and made batting look quite easy at times, but just was not scoring quickly enough.
Your thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, I didn't see a hell of a lot of it, but I did see, the 55 for 5, and at least Brooke Halliday and Hannah Rowe, who both got, I think, 70 and 50 respectively, at least we weren't completely reliant on the big guns to score all of the runs. I actually think in this match that we just lost the plot with the bowling, and then we dropped a bunch of catches and some crappy kind of run-out opportunities missed. It felt like a pretty ragged performance, to be honest, and surely they can get a bit better from here. The other thing that caught my eye was poor old Bernadine Bisonhout, who was the wicket keeper. She's out with pericarditis, which is like, that's the lining around your heart. God, that's the kind of injury that you just do not want to get. That just doesn't sound good at all. So good luck to her.
I think Izzy Gaze came in and played really well, though, didn't she? Which is a silver lining to a pretty desperate situation.
Absolutely right. That's bang on, DC.
Welcome back. So, Ben Stokes and hair plugs.
Yeah, look, this was an extraordinary interview he did, and he set out the interview right from the start by telling the interviewer, which was Oliver Brown, I think, that there were going to be no cliched answers.
Right,
to his questions. And yeah, just a couple of things stood out in this long interview, which you can actually find on the Stuff website. He's talking about his leadership style, and he says, and the writer says, for it is on Don War Daddy Collier, Pitt's character in the Second World War epic Fury, that Stokes models his leadership. Never mind scouring cricket memoirs, the game's ultimate alpha male looks to a battle-hardened tank commander for his cues on how to inspire. And Stokes is quoted as saying, he told all the other lads in the tank that had broken down, go, I've got this. I'll fight them all off so you guys can get away. Stokes explains, and we've got a clip from that movie explaining that scene right now.
Boys, get on. It's all right. Grady, come on. We're gonna stay. What is your plan?
And the second thing he said that was of great interest to me was explaining his hair plugs.
Yeah.
And he said, men and hair, it's a thing. The procedures used to be kept quiet. It was almost one of those things where you didn't want people to know you had done it. There's so much more to it than losing your hair. If you start thinning, you notice, and you're constantly trying to do something to make it not look as bad. As people get older, they want to have a good head of hair. So whatever they can do to make them feel better about themselves, why not? I know how I felt from all the compliments I received. It gives you so much confidence. The stigma and secretness have gone.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. There's a rich history of hair plugs and cricketers.
Yeah.
A Gooch, Matthews,
Warne, Hoyte.
Nah, mate. I've got my own natural, luxurious mane.
It's almost like cricketers are a bit of a soft underbelly on this particular topic, and they are appealing to the vanity of cricketers who then go out and play cricket normally under a batting helmet or some sort of hat. So it's quite an interesting thing that they've really tapped into that market. I did note that Ben Stokes said that he liked fighting people off. I think that you said that about the character that he'd modelled himself on. I thought that was interesting, given he's known as the gay Avenger, of course, in the ACC. I also note that he released this during Mental Health Awareness Week, I believe, and I can't help but wonder whether someone like Ben Stokes worrying about a little bald patch on the top of his head and then talking about it and telling everyone that they should be worrying about it and then spending thousands of dollars to fix it is really doing much to help most people's mental health, unless he's paying for the people to get their hair fixed personally.
Fair point.
That is a good point. And I'm not sure I'm doing much for Ben Stokes' mental health, and we know he's a listener of this podcast. When I say
totally.
I'm not sure in terms of vanity whether the bald patch was the most of his worries.
Yeah. Well, yeah, big call. I'd get new locks put on your doors, Dylan, if you're going to make that kind of accusation. Hey, now, ESPN Cricket Monthly's 20 greatest one-dayers of all time.
They're counting down.
New Zealand is featured in one match thus far, number 16, round-robin match versus Australia at Cricket World Cup 2015, and we suspect it'll feature at least once more.
Yeah, I think it might feature fairly close to the top of that.
Yes, I would say so.
You may have already referenced it.
Yes.
Painfully on this podcast. But yeah, the number 16 was interesting. In fact, the whole list is quite interesting. I can't help but feel it has a slightly Asian bias. There's a couple of finals in there, a couple of matches in there from bilateral series, which, there's one where Ganguly rips his shirt off and waves it round, which I thought was a dubious inclusion. But number 16 is a good one, a low-scoring classic at Eden Park.
Yes.
I was there. Were you there?
I think I was there, actually, yes.
You commentating,
you were there.
probably?
Yeah.
Before you got kicked out?
I didn't get kicked out.
Yeah.
No, Jason, I didn't get kicked out.
We were responsible citizens, Dylan.
But that was a cracking ODI. Often overlooked in the whole drama of that tournament, but just two left-armers at the peak of their game in Stark and Bolt.
Bolty, yeah.
And
I am.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go.
And the emergence of, he had already emerged by then, let's be real, but kind of thrusting himself into a global spotlight was the cool-headedness and calmness of one Kane Williamson to hit the six off Cummins to win the game.
I hope that other terrible one day of the underarm game is on that list. I haven't seen the list, so I don't know. But I was just thinking, when I think personally about the best game of cricket, or a game of cricket that triggered my love for it, and it was the game at Hobart, and it was Chris Pringle bowling that maiden over to Bruce Reid. That was the first time that anyone had bowled a maiden to win a game of cricket, and it was, I just remember it was just unbelievable. I'm pretty sure it was just before Christmas 1990. So, that's probably not on that list, but certainly would be on my list if it was Paul Ford biased instead of Indian cricket biased.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of Paul Ford, it's time for Paul Ford's News or Ruse. Yes,
it is, Jace. And this week we're going to be heading off to India initially. I'll say three bits of news. There's something wrong with one of them. The reigning champion is accidentally Dylan Cleaver, I believe. So the ugliest trophy in
totally
cricket is over on the North Shore.
Do you know I haven't got one wrong this season? It's
Unbelievable.
a staggering run of success.
Well, what about
And
when
Jace-
I've had it?
I still got it right.
And Jace has never accused you of any skullduggery in that regard.
Exactly.
But then as soon as Jace gets something anywhere near it, you start having a little tanty. Anyway, first up, Smriti Mandana has her fair share of fans, but the Indian women's team's vice captain would have been pretty chuffed when she saw a poster captioned "Mandana the Goddess" being proudly held aloft by a young man in China. Jun Yu is a rare species who loves the thwack of wood meeting leather, and love for cricket made him travel 1,200 kilometres from Beijing to Hangzhou to watch Mandana in action, playing for India at the Asian Games. Yu was one of the motley crowd who turned up at the Ping Feng cricket field, and he had some information to share about that. He said, "I couldn't play cricket even if I wanted to. There's not even a proper ground, and this ground was a flower field before the Asian Games converted it into a cricket field." He also dropped the bombshell when talking to Indian media by saying that his favourite cricketer was not Sachin Tendulkar, but Kane Williamson. That's what this Masters of Zoology student said at the Asian Games. Number 2, the umpire whose error effectively cost New Zealand the 2019 Cricket World Cup final has been appointed for the opening game of this year's tournament against England. Kumar Dharmasena, along with Nitin Menon, will be the on-field umpires when the Black Caps meet the defending champs in Ahmedabad on October 5th to start the 2023 World Cup. Dharmasena, of course, was in the middle with pistol Paul rifle at Lords in the 2019 final and made a crucial error in the final over of England's chase for victory. We don't want to get into too many details of that because we'll all burst into tears. And number 3, Pakistan cricket team captain Babar Azam has been slapped with a penalty ahead of his team's departure for India for the 2023 One-Day World Cup. Babar, who will be leading the Pakistan team for the first time in the One-Day International Tournament and the third time in an ICC event, received a penalty for violating 2 traffic rules in Lahore. He was penalised $40 for 2 violations, 1 for a lane violation, and then it was discovered when he got pulled over that he did not have his driver's licence. So a double whammy for Babar Azam, but he will be travelling to India for the Cricket World Cup.
Well, there's all sorts of things there that Jason can try and pick in my wake, but I'm going to go for story 2, and I'm going to say Kumar Dharmasena was in the middle, not with pistol Paul rifle, but with South African Murray Erasmus. What are you going to go for?
Oh, well, that's what I was going to go for.
No, you can't now. New rules.
Oh.
No, that's a tie. That's a tie.
I won on boundary countback.
Yeah. You won on a deflection off my bat. That's exactly what I was going to say, though, having just, yes. But, okay.
I saw you had a tick beside Smriti Mandana there.
Yeah, well, no, I was just flirting with a few things there, so...
Flirting with Smriti Mandana, Jace?
Yes, I was. Hey, what's happening in Cricket Violence Corner, Paul Ford?
Paul Ford's Cricket Violence Corner.
The notorious eco-activist who stormed Lords is leading the Just Stop Oil protest group's student recruitment drive. Daniel Knorr, 21-year-old studying biochemistry at the University of Oxford, gave a talk to some impressionable undergraduates from the university and urged them to join slow marches with Just Stop Oil in London. During his 2-hour talk, the protester bragged about storming the second Ashes match at Lords in June and throwing orange powder into the air while sporting a Just Stop Oil t-shirt. He was pictured punching the air while being hauled off the field by Johnny Bairstow, of course. Nor explained that he posed in this way to look cool, so that his picture would look cool on the front of every major newspaper around the cricketing universe. He also joked about evading security by hiding orange powder and Just Stop Oil t-shirts inside bread made to look like sandwiches. And this is the most disappointing and disgraceful act of all. After being released from jail, he celebrated his stunt by drinking a bottle of Prosecco with fellow Just Stop Oil activists. I mean, Prosecco, what the hell?
Yeah.
Could have at least been a buttery shard or something.
My daughter's fond of the old... Oh, both my daughters, actually, fond of the Prosecco. Yeah. Maybe it's a younger thing. Hey, listen, Paul Ford, if people want to get in touch with us, mate, what do they want to do and, pass on their thoughts and their correspondence?
Fire us an email to byc@begebrigade.co.nz or slide into our DMs on Instagram or Facebook for the Alternative Commentary Collective or the Beige Brigade.
Great stuff, Dylan Cleaver, the bounce.
Bounce is still in full World Cup mode Rugby World Cup mode.
Oh, how good. I don't know if you watched the Ireland.
I did.
Yeah, good game.
It was a good pulsating game. I don't think it's peak rugby like everyone else.
Well, we're going to have to be at the very best, at our very best to beat them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I still think that game's been overblown a bit. I mean, 15-13 between number 1 and number 2 team in the world. Yeah.
South Africa's still my favourites, but I digress. Great stuff, mate.
Great stuff, yeah.
Listen, thanks for listening to this podcast. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Until then, take care and we'll see you later.